breath and forced myself to focus on finding a solution. There has to be something. We have women leading packs perfectly fine, or is it until some guy decides he wants to be alpha, and since women don't count for crap, they have to step down? Hell, his niece by mateship was leading her pack alone for nearly a whole year before she mated Mike. How? That's a sticky gray area, Brent admitted. A pack cannot change leadership without a challenge. A woman leader, therefore, in theory, would be unchallengeable until she is a mate. However, I've heard about and seen several women met with resistance to leading, so I'm not sure how this would help your cause, especially when the challenger is your brother and the position would have fallen to him originally. I sighed, leaning back in my chair. Is there some way I can contest this without challenging him? Perhaps bring evidence that points him as unfit to be alpha. He shook his head. First, all the annual meeting just ended. No one is going to make a second trip back here. Also, none of the other alphas want to start pointing fingers at other alphas as incompetent for fear someone's finger may fall on them. It took me years of arguments and meetings to get any of the others to consider Alpha Ryan Howe as unfit to be alpha, but nothing happened until Brooke decided to do something, nearly killing herself in the process. I flexed and closed my injured fist, the muscles tight and hesitant still. There had to be a way. Brandon couldn't take my home and people from me. Nicole, Brent said, his voice so gentle it made me look up. I am truly sorry all of this happened. It never was my intention, and I'll do my best to find some loophole or a gray area to exploit, but you have to face the real possibility you may never lead your old pack. Anger surged in me. I wouldn't. I couldn't. There had to be a way, and I was going to find it. Thank you for all your help and an apology, but I will find a way. I won't let him take the pack from me. He gave me a tight smile in reply, and I knew he thought I was obtuse and stubborn. If you find something, you know where to find me. I need to check in with my people, I said, standing. Of course, Alpha, Brent said, then turned his gaze to his son. I'd like to speak with you for a moment, Dean. Sure thing, he said. I'll catch up with you later, Nick. I nodded and left, wondering what the Alpha was going to say to his son. Perhaps ask him to reconsider taking a rogue as a mate. Or maybe Alpha Brent was going to ask Dean to make me see reason and give up, let Brandon win. I hoped if it were the one, Dean was smart enough to tell his father it would never work. I found the others in the gym. All of them were working out, even Sade. Any luck, she asked. No, the Alpha seems to believe the laws were pretty cut and dry. He circumflex men only, and where they're not, he thinks the other Alphas can't be bothered to care, I replied. I believe it, John said, passing me a weight. Can you imagine what would happen if you actually do this, if you actually take the Alpha ship from Brandon? So what? This means every other Luna and Alpha female could do the same, meaning Alpha's greedy hold on their power would be at risk. Wesley jumped in. It's the same reason the laws about the change of leadership has always been physical and limited to only the Alpha born. If we chose our leaders to say by merit, vote, or whatever, quite a few Alphas would risk losing their packs and power. So what? It's hopeless then, I said, feeling myself deflate. No, not at all, John said. Only we're going to have to count on ourselves and no one else, Sade offered. Then suddenly her eyes widened, and she stood up from the bench she was sitting on. Oh, I've got an idea. What? I asked, half laughing. Dean? I scowled at her. I'm not going to ask Dean to fight Brandon. I told you that already. She scowled right back at me. That's not what I was going to say. Okay, fine. What is your idea? I crossed my arms over my chest. Thanks to Alpha Brent's attempt to force you to stay with Dean, we have everything we need. What do you mean? I asked. Holy, Wesley said, his eyes widening. You're right. What? I demanded. Alpha Brent said he wasn't breaking any of our laws because he claimed it was a pack challenge fight. Why can't we use it to call foul on your father passing the pack to Brandon? Because it's not his pack to pass on, John said in turn, snapping his fingers. We could even get Alpha Brent and his people to back up the claim. I bit my lip, hope and hesitation fighting each other inside me. But Dean doesn't want to be Alpha, I said finally. He doesn't have to be, John said. We could follow our original plan. You take him as your mate. This would make Dean Alpha in name only, and you'd be the real one running the show. Which would mean I'd have to officially take Dean as my mate. I liked Dean, and I trusted him, but I didn't know him. I wanted to have the time to do that before I did anything so official. I sighed and ran a hand over my head. I guess that'd work, I admitted. But I still would like to find something which doesn't depend on Dean. We don't even know if he'd be willing to do it. Sade snorted. You're kidding, right? He'd do anything you'd ask him to do. I frowned again. Why would Dean do that? It'd be stupid on his part. Yeah, the whole mate thing was there, but it didn't always mean the other person thought of anything beyond their own interest. Well, I would still like to find another way, I insisted. Sade sighed. You need to give him more credit. I growled at her. I give Dean enough credit. This isn't about Dean being good enough or strong enough. It's about me and about who I am. I don't want to be the one who runs to someone else every time something goes wrong. This is my pack, my people, and I want to be the one to solve the problem. God, Sade, is that how you're with Wes? Everything he does is always going to be okay with you? Do you ask him permission to go out of the house too? No, of course not, she snapped back at me. But I count on Wes to be there if I need him, because needing someone, Nick, isn't a bad thing. Perhaps you need to make this less about you and your pride and more about you both. He deserves that much considering all he's done. I blew out of breath and crossed my arms. This has nothing to do with pride. Right, short, Sade said, crossing her arms. Okay, ladies, John said, holding up his hands. We need to be working together, remember. How about we take 5 and you guys chill? Whatever, Sade said, shaking her head, and stalked out of the gym. When Buck crawled up her butt, I demanded. I'll go talk to her, Wesley said, following her out. Is what I'm saying seriously so hard to understand? I asked John. No, I get it. You want to prove your right to lead, and if Dean goes and plays that I beat him in a challenge card, some people might see it as lessening your right. You replied that he gave me a slight grimace. But Nick, this situation may not allow you the chance to prove yourself, and honestly, those who need such proof don't matter to you in the long run, not really. I frowned. What is it with people telling me to give up today? I'm not saying give up, just keep in mind the alternatives, even if you don't like them, Honorable said, and pat me on the shoulder. Come on, you need to do some work. All week long you've hardly trained at all. If you're going to kick Brandon's ass, you need to be in top form. 15. 16, Dean, I feel like I'm a broken record, but I'll ask again. What is the plan, Dean? Dad asked, leaning back in his chair, watching me with an intense glare. What makes you think I have a plan? Dean, Dad said, looking exasperated at me. Seriously, why should I have a plan for every little thing? I argued. Dad pinched the bridge of his nose and didn't say anything for a long moment. Dean, listen to me. You need to be ready for the fallout. What fallout? He shook his head as he looked up at me. You need to be prepared when Nicole's crusade to lead her pack fails. I inwardly sighed and glanced up at the ceiling, hoping whatever divinity was up there would lend me a hand. Didn't you just agree to help her? Our laws are pretty black and white when it comes to the ways a challenge can be made. Maybe, just maybe, if her father hadn't given the pack to her brother, we could have found some room to breathe, but he did. So thus you need to be ready for the fallout, Dean. I take it she didn't take the news of her brother's takeover very well, and I expect she will receive the reality of the situation even harder. You didn't answer my question, I said, getting angrier. Why did you agree to help if there is no way she can take the pack back? You saw I tried to warn her. Nicole didn't want to listen when I tried to warn her. If I refused once again, I'd be the evil alpha, and right now I don't see where playing the part again would help either of you. Which brings me back to my question, what is your plan, Dean? I shrugged with a sound that was both a mix of a growl and a sigh. Dean, this isn't something you can bullshit through here. You realize as her mate, if you accept her as such, you will be at some point asked or expected to challenge Nicole's brother for her, or perhaps he'll demand one from you. Have you thought what your answer would be? Are you prepared to fight him? Unease crept into me. Nick hadn't asked me to fight for her. Honestly, I couldn't see her asking me to do so, but the others, they would or will. I shifted in my seat and shrugged, feeling like I was back in school with the teacher waiting for me to answer a question I neither listened to and probably wouldn't have an answer to. That's what I suspected, Dad said, shaking his head. You need to be prepared, either with an alternative to fighting or for the fight itself. I know this isn't easy, but just like Ryder. I made a scoff of exasperation. Right, Ryder. Well, guess what, Dad? I'm not the perfect son and future alpha like Ryder. I never will be. Stop trying to make me just like him because it's not going to happen. Dean, that's the Dad started, but I stood up and left before he finished. I ran my hands through my hair as I stalked down the hall and outside, where I sat down in one of the patio chairs. God, this sucked. I didn't want to fight Nick's brother. I hate dominance fights and challenges. I hated fighting in any situation if it wasn't defending myself or someone else. Yet it looked like everyone was going to expect me to do it. I couldn't suggest something else. The pack was everything to her, and she'd hate me if I suggested anything close to giving up. "There he is," Kara said. I looked up from my lap as the others sat around me. "Hey guys," I said flatly. "Oh, that doesn't sound good." "What's up?" Ryder asked. "Besides the fact I'm not you," I asked sarcastically. "Thank God for that," Andy chimed in. "What happened?" Brooke asked, worry in her face. I took a slow breath and told them what Dad had said to me. "He has a point," Ryder said with a shrug. "You'd say that," I replied. "What's that supposed to mean?" he asked, looking offended. Brooke gave him a little push and shook her head at him before looking at me. "Let me guess, you and Nick haven't actually sat and talked about what's next, right?" "Yeah, getting her pack back." "How have you talked about the how or the what if everything goes butts up?" Andy demanded. Yet once again I shrugged. "Dude, you need to. You guys need to make sure you're on the same page. Don't be like Ryder and wait until the crap hits the fan to talk about things." "Really, man?" Ryder demanded. "Don't you dare be offended, Ryder. Andy's right. Your dad told me we were mates, and it wasn't until I was recovering in the hospital after everything did I start to understand what it actually meant." "So yeah, Dean, talk to Nick and don't be like Ryder," Brooke said. I snickered, now a lot better after hearing those words. "Okay, so I have to talk to Nick, but what am I going to do about the whole fighting thing?" "Dad says I'm going to have to sooner or later." "That's up to you," Kara said. "All relationships require compromise, but of course there is to be a line. If a challenge fight is something that would violate who you are, you're going to have to tell her, because if it is and you don't tell her or let her think it's an option, you're a huge douchebag and I'll kick your ass." I grinned, definitely 100 times better. God, I love my friends. "Look, Kara, I'm taken now. I can't be freaky with you anymore. I know Andy is lacking." I jumped out of the chair and ran from Andy as he leaped at me. "Come here, you little creep. I'll show you who's lacking," he threatened. "Relax, people. I will not be used like this. I am a person, not your toy to vent your sexual frustrations," I complained, keeping a good distance from Andy. "Not even in your dreams, dude," Andy growled, trying to grab me. "I'd rather screw a cactus. Perhaps he is kinky enough, Kara. You should give him a try," I said, winking at her just before I ducked and dodged Andy again. "Dean, you're horrible," Brooke said, laughing. "I know," I replied. "Now I got a mate to talk to, so I can't play Antipoo." I dodged him again and ran into the house, closing the door and locking it before he followed me in. With a grin, I went to find Nick or one of her gang. It was time we really talked and had an idea of what we wanted to do next, even in the worst case scenario. I didn't want to play the part Dad was trying to force me into, but he had a point. If the worst happened, what were we going to do? Asterisk author notes asterisk. Starting this week, I'm going to start putting teasers on my Twitter at JogeryID2 and Instagram Tail Author pages. Haven't figured out what days yet, but I'm going to be posting them. 1617. Nick, after my training and shower, I sat outside despite the chill, letting my mind process everything that had happened when Dean found me. "Hey," I said, running my hand over my head, bowing to cut my hair. It had grown out during my shifts and about 3 or 4 inches long, was too long for my taste. "What did your dad want?" "The usual. What about you? Anything new?" "No luck with the law so far, but Sade has an idea." "What is the usual?" "Does he want you to convince me to be a good girl and stop making waves?" Dean gave me a half smile. "The usual is him complaining I'm not like my brother. He isn't against you leading, Nick. He believes it's going to be impossible. So does everyone else, it seems." Dean shrugged. "Usually I'd say it doesn't matter what people think. But," I asked, glancing over at him. He shifted in his chair, looking uncomfortable. "Go ahead and say what you got to say, Dean." "It's just," he started. "What if they're right?" Dean quickly raised his hands. "Not that I'm saying they are or you should stop trying. It's only," he sighed and looked even more uncomfortable. "We haven't known each other long, but things are a mess, and being what we are means I'm part of it too. Only I'm not sure exactly how